have so much to talk about. Let's start with the redemption tour for Karens. Hey, if you're a Karen, guess what? Karen Pence is taking back your good name. I know, we're all in shock. But for all you non-Karens out there, don't worry, plenty of content to go around for you. We're also going to talk about how the Supreme Court refused to postpone Donald Trump's sentencing hearing in the hush money case, despite the fact that Donald Trump asked them, the Supreme Court, to halt the proceedings, and despite the fact that Donald Trump had a phone call with Justice Alito prior to that. Spoiler alert, Justice Alito was one of the dissenting judges in this decision. Also going to talk about how Jack Smith gets to publish his special report. I know, it turns out the universe does want us to have nice things. Karen Pence, wife of Vice President Mike Pence, really said justice for Karens as she very, very publicly and intentionally snubbed Donald Trump at Jimmy Carter's state funeral today. Former President Jimmy Carter was lying in state, and today was his official state funeral. So all the vice presidents and presidents showed up for this, including Trump's own former vice president, Mike Pence, and his wife, Karen Pence. You can see former Vice President Mike Pence and his wife sitting down. And then as Trump enters the row, former Vice President Al Gore stands up, as does Mike Pence, and they both shake his hand. And Karen Pence is like, I'm good. Doesn't stand up. I'm not sure if Trump says anything because he does seem to be facing her for quite a while. So if anybody has an alternative angle to that, maybe we can get someone who reads lips to zoom in on that. I'd love to know. But for those of you who do not think that this was an intentional snub of former president, now President-elect Donald Trump, let me show you this footage of Karen Pence greeting George W. Bush and his wife, Laura Bush. Very warmly, very happily, eagerly greeting these people. And I don't even think we should classify this as petty behavior because for all intents and purposes, her husband's business partner basically heard an angry mob chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," and he thought, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do that. And very publicly called him a coward. So I feel like not shaking Donald Trump's hand was the appropriate and justifiable response here. Moving on to something equally fun that happened today, the Supreme Court said no to Donald Trump. He was like, hey, can you delay my case in the hush money thing? Because I'm like about to be president. It's going to be kind of awkward if I get sentenced for these like 34 felonies. Can you do me a solid? Because I appointed like half of you. And they were like, cool, no. This, despite the fact that Donald Trump had a phone call with Supreme Court Justice Alito before he publicly asked the Supreme Court to delay his sentencing. Let me explain this again. The subject of a case, who was going to come before, likely, this judge who was going to decide the outcome of that, he called him and he accepted the call. I didn't have to go to law school to know that's not right. That's a conflict of interest. So you've got a judge on the highest court speaking to a felon who wants to have his sentencing delayed because he obviously doesn't want to incur any type of sentencing, even if it's not just jail, even if it's anything at all. He doesn't want to have to be held accountable. And he's like, hey, can you help me out? Let's have a chat about it. And this justice is like, I don't have any clear ethics guidelines that prevent me from doing this. YOLO! After news of the call was leaked and everybody found out that Justice Alito had talked with Donald Trump, then Alito came out and said, it's not what you think. Trump was just checking in on a reference for one of my former job clerks, as a president would call a Supreme Court justice directly for. We didn't talk about the hush money case at all. No big deal. Nothing to see here, which is totally reasonable and not at all suspicious. And I guess it was just a coincidence that Justice Alito was one of the 4 dissenting judges in this case. Fortunately for us, and I don't know how to reconcile this, but Chief Justice John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, they sided with the liberal justices on this. They said no to Donald Trump. Because they were like, look, he's not going to be sentenced to jail. He's not going to receive any fines, and he's not going to receive any probation. I don't understand what sentencing is if you don't get any of those things. But basically they were like, there's no reason this trial can't, or this sentencing can't go forward. And I'm just saying it's a weird thing to think about Amy Coney Barrett and Chief Justice John Roberts knowing something is so incredibly egregiously wrong that they actually have to side with liberal justices. And that is actually the only way we're going to get any reasonable case law for the next, I don't know, however long, until the Democrats figure out a way to balance this stolen court. And that's important because we're going to need them again if Trump decides to appeal this. The appeals court has allowed special counsel's report by Jack Smith to be released to the public, which is going to show all about how he tried to overthrow that 2020 election. And he could appeal that to the Supreme Court. And I'm guessing he'll have a few phone calls with whatever justices will take his phone call. But I don't know. I have a theory that maybe, just maybe, they're going to stop catering specifically to Trump. Not the Republican agenda. They're still going to be behind that. But the powers that be, the people who are pushing the machine, don't love Donald Trump as the head guy because he's a hothead. He doesn't always follow directions. He's not easily coached, but you know who is? J.D. Vance, because he loves money and he loves power. How long before they oust Trump and they put J.D. Vance in the game? Maybe this is where the tide turns. You know, it's kind of like a Trojan horse thing. They bought their way into the White House and now they're like, JK, new leader on deck. And then I may have to start a new channel talking about canning food or gardening or books or anything that's apolitical and doesn't drain the life out of me. Imagine me not being controversial. What a life. Okay, see you next time.